A pillar of resilience in her community, a mother, a leader, Barbara Deer's life was a testament to strength in the face of profound loss. But beneath the surface of public admiration, a private struggle was unfolding, leading to a tragedy no one saw coming. What really happened in that quiet Chicago home? Just before 6 p.m. yesterday evening, Chicago police rushed to a residence on the 3500 block of West Arthington. There, they discovered the bodies of a 51-year-old woman and a 23-year-old man. We have since confirmed these victims were family members of a former, now deceased, Cook County Commissioner. Neighbors first noticed a dog left outside, longer than made sense. An unsettling quiet had fallen over a house that was usually vibrant and full of life. Not a sound, not a scream, nothing to mark the end of two lives. Someone made a call, officers arrived, and what they found in that basement on West Arthington Street will forever impact everyone who entered. Barbara Deer was 51 years old. She had built something truly meaningful in her life, not the kind that generates headlines, but the kind that makes a profound difference in classrooms, in therapy sessions, and in a community that genuinely needed her. She was a speech-language pathologist who dedicated nearly 2 decades to Chicago public schools before successfully building her own private practice from the ground up, overseeing 14 therapists. This was her operation, her vision. Those who knew her described how she moved through a room as if she already knew everyone in it, because, more often than not, she did. She grew up in North Lawndale and chose to stay, a decision that carried significant meaning. Barbara was also a widow, shouldering a weight most people couldn't fathom. Her husband, Dennis, her high school sweetheart and partner of over 2 decades, had passed away less than 2 years prior. He had been a Cook County Commissioner, a West Side Democrat renowned for his equity work that transcended political rhetoric, transforming into tangible policy. He fought valiantly for his life after a double lung transplant but ultimately lost that battle at 51. Barbara was left to navigate the wreckage, raising 3 children, running 2 organizations, and striving to keep his legacy alive while simultaneously building her own. Her son, Caleb, was 23. Like his mother, he had grown up deeply rooted in this neighborhood. He had a twin brother, Canaan, and a sister, Trinity. His mother had already survived the unsurvivable once. What transpired inside that home on April 14, 2026, is currently being investigated by Area 4 detectives as an apparent murder-suicide. Barbara was shot 3 times, Caleb once. A single weapon was recovered near his body. There have been no arrests and no other suspects. The working theory, according to police sources, is as direct and devastating as it sounds. I want to be transparent about what drew me into this case, because it wasn't solely the crime itself, brutal though it is. It was the timing. It was the specific, harrowing shape of this family's grief. Dennis Deer died in June 2024. Less than 2 years later, Barbara and Caleb are also gone. 3 losses in one household in under 2 years. As I began to pull on that thread, examining Barbara's activities since Dennis's passing, what she was building, the public roles she was being asked to step into, I kept returning to one question that the police report doesn't answer, and perhaps cannot: what was truly happening inside that house that no one on the outside knew about? Barbara had received a union endorsement for a potential run at Dennis's old seat on the Cook County Board. She was the CEO of Juneteenth, Illinois. She served on the board of a legal center that had just opened a community justice center in her late husband's name. From an external perspective, this was a family in the midst of building a legacy, not at the end of one. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle rightly stated that there are no words that can make sense of this kind of pain. But words aren't really what this case is asking for. What it's asking for, what Barbara and Caleb deserve, is the full picture. And we don't have it yet. The investigation that ensued was not a manhunt. There was no suspect to chase, no vehicle to track, no phone to ping across a cell tower grid. What Area 4 detectives began constructing from the moment they cleared that basement was, in its own way, something far more challenging: a comprehensive understanding of what led to a moment that left no one alive to explain it. The 11th District handled the initial response, with Area 4 taking over the case. This transfer is standard in Chicago for deaths of this complex and high-profile nature, requiring detectives with the capacity to extend their work beyond the initial 48 hours. The investigators who took on this case immediately understood that forensic evidence would only provide part of the story. Wound patterns and weapon placement can confirm a sequence of events, but they cannot explain the underlying reasons. The warrant process commenced with the physical scene. The basement was meticulously processed for forensic evidence, including gunshot residue, blood spatter analysis, and the trajectory of each round. In suspected murder-suicide cases, spatter patterns and GSR distribution on the deceased's hands are crucial. They help investigators determine if the person found holding the weapon was indeed the one who fired it. These results directly inform the medical examiner's determination of the manner of death, which in this case officially remains pending. Digital evidence is also a key component. In instances where no note is left and no prior incidents are on record, investigators routinely seek access to phones, social media accounts, and messaging histories to reconstruct the emotional and relational state of the individuals involved in the days and weeks leading up to the incident. While warrants for such material have not been publicly confirmed, it would be standard procedure here and is almost certainly part of Area 4's ongoing work. What structurally differentiates this investigation from a homicide with a living suspect is the absence of anyone against whom to build a case for trial. The objective shifts. It is no longer about prosecution, it is about understanding, for the medical examiner's office, for the family, and for the public record. This shift reorients investigators' priorities, but it does not diminish the rigor of their work. If anything, it demands even more meticulous documentation because there is no courtroom waiting to scrutinize the conclusions. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office is conducting full autopsies on both Barbara and Caleb. Toxicology screening, which tests for substances that could affect behavior or judgment, typically takes 4 to 6 weeks to return results in Cook County. Until these results are available, the official manner of death remains open. This holds legal significance and is deeply important to the family. The distinction between a ruling of homicide and suicide on a death certificate carries consequences for insurance, estate matters, and the public record of who these individuals were and what ultimately happened to them. It is worth noting what was conspicuously absent before this tragedy occurred. There were no prior calls to the address, no documented interventions, no crisis referrals. Barbara Deer had dedicated nearly 2 decades to working within Chicago public schools as a speech-language pathologist, a profession founded on identifying needs and connecting individuals to support. Professionally, she understood what it looked like when someone was struggling. This, however, does not mean she necessarily recognized it within her own home. Grief does not announce itself with the clear clinical presentations that professionals are trained to identify. Often, those closest to the pain are the last to fully grasp its true shape. This is not a failing on Barbara's part, it is a recurring pattern. Families who have visibly and gracefully survived one devastating public loss, often in service to a community watching them, frequently carry the immense weight of that visibility into their private spaces, where it manifests differently. The profound pressure to simply be okay, to persevere, to represent something larger than personal pain, does not dissipate after the funeral. It compounds. And it is rarely visible from the outside until something within finally breaks. The investigation is now working to determine whether there were any legible signs inside that house, in messages, in behavior, in the days immediately preceding the incident that might have been apparent to anyone, or whether this was the kind of breaking point that occurs without leaving any discernible trail. The charges that would typically follow an investigation of this nature will not be filed. There is no defendant, no trial date. Instead, what will emerge is a medical examiner's ruling, a final police report, and whatever the digital record reveals about the weeks that led to that Tuesday evening in April. The case is being actively worked, and the results are not yet in. But somewhere between the last time this family was seen publicly and the moment that dog was still outside, something happened that no one who loved them knew was coming. While investigators were processing that basement, the rest of Chicago was still going about its Tuesday evening. The West Side didn't know yet. The Cook County Board didn't know yet. The 14 therapists who worked in Barbara's practice didn't know yet. The organizations she led, the boards she sat on, the community that had quietly watched her, wondering if she would step into her husband's old seat, none of them knew. That gap between what had already occurred and what the world had not yet been told lasted only hours in this case. By Wednesday morning, the story had broken, and the outpouring of responses revealed something specific about who Barbara Deer was to the people who knew her. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle issued a statement. Board commissioners gathered and observed a moment of silence. SEU Local 73, the union that had endorsed Barbara for a potential run at Dennis's former seat, fell quiet in the way organizations do when something happens that no prepared statement can adequately absorb. The Lawndale Christian Legal Center, which had just opened the Dr. Dennis Deer Community Justice Center in honor of her late husband, was now mourning the woman who had helped bring that center into existence. The community response on social media was swift. Facebook lit up within hours, local news shares, neighborhood group posts, memorial tributes flooding timelines from people who had known Barbara through her school years, through her practice, through Juneteenth Illinois events, and through the long public vigil of Dennis's illness and death. People posted old photos. They shared clips from community events. They wrote about her in the way people write about someone who showed up consistently over decades, not dramatically, not for attention, but reliably in the places that needed her most. What was quieter, and perhaps more telling, were the threads in private West Side neighborhood groups, where people weren't performing grief for a public audience. Those conversations consistently returned to the same realization, not accusation, not conspiracy, but a helpless recognition that this family had already endured so much. That 2 years is simply not enough time. That grief, when unaddressed within a household expected to model resilience for an entire community, can manifest in forms that no one on the outside is positioned to see. No one in those threads claimed inside knowledge. No one named specific arguments, threats, or incidents. What they expressed, over and over, was the quiet devastation of retrospect, the feeling of looking back at a picture that once seemed whole and suddenly finding the fracture lines that were previously missed. This is the behavioral reality of cases like this one. The profile that aligns with what apparently occurred here, a young adult male deeply mired in unprocessed grief, maintaining a functional public exterior while something private deteriorates, is not rare. Researchers who study filicide and family violence in the context of bereavement have consistently documented this pattern. The person who ultimately breaks is often not the one who appeared to be struggling. Instead, it is often the one who appeared to be managing, the one who had structurally absorbed the loss, taken on new roles, remained present, and kept functioning, without ever being given or giving themselves the space to truly fall apart in a way that someone else could see and respond to. Caleb had lost his father at 21. He had watched his mother publicly carry that burden for nearly 2 years. He had a twin brother and a sister in a household built on a powerful legacy of service and resilience. What space truly existed within that structure for him to not be okay? This is not a rhetorical question. It is the profound question this case places directly on the table for every family holding grief together for the sake of something larger than themselves. The red flags in situations like this are rarely dramatic. They are the absence of complaint. The continued functioning. The person who, when asked how they're doing, says, "Fine," and means it in the only way they know how to mean it, which is that they are still standing. Barbara's colleague at the Lawndale Christian Legal Center described her, in the days after her death, as someone who poured into everyone around her without ever appearing to need anything poured back. That portrait of a woman who gave without visible depletion is also a portrait of a household where need itself may have been structurally invisible. The world found out on a Wednesday morning. The investigation had already been running through the night, and what nobody outside that basement had yet confronted was the question that autopsies, warrants, and forensic reports cannot answer, the one that belongs entirely to the people left behind. Here is what we do not yet know: we do not know what the toxicology results will show. We do not know what the digital record, the phones, the messages, the search histories, contains. We do not know whether there were conversations in the days before this that someone, somewhere, is now replaying and rereading, asking themselves what they missed. The official manner of death ruling has not been issued. Until it is, this case is not closed in any meaningful sense for the people carrying its weight. Canaan Deer lost his twin brother and his mother on the same evening. Trinity Deer lost her brother and the woman who had already guided her family through one unsurvivable loss. Those two individuals are now the ones holding what remains of a household that Chicago knew as a symbol of West Side resilience. What that weight actually feels like from the inside, what it costs them to wake up every morning in the aftermath of this, is not something any investigation report will ever capture. The Lawndale Christian Legal Center, which opened its doors in Dennis Deer's name, now carries that name into a future where his wife and one of his sons are also gone. The center was built to deliver justice to a community historically failed by the systems meant to protect it. There is a particular and painful irony in the fact that the family behind that mission has now experienced a loss that no legal center, no policy, no institutional response could have prevented or addressed. What justice owes this family is not a verdict. There is no defendant. There is no trial. What it owes them is honesty, a full, complete, publicly available accounting of what the evidence showed, what the toxicology confirmed, and what, if anything, was in place or not in place that a different system might have caught. Mental health infrastructure for grieving families, particularly families carrying public loss in communities that have historically been under-resourced for mental health services, is not a new policy gap. It is a documented, persistent, and underfunded one. This case did not create that gap, but it stands as one of the clearest illustrations of what that gap costs when it goes unfilled. A 23-year-old who had lost his father, living inside a household organized around legacy, resilience, and public expectation, needed something that was either not available, not accessed, or simply not enough. We do not know which. We may never know which. That is the part that sits wrong with me. Not the investigation. Area 4 is working diligently, the medical examiner's office is doing its job. The process is moving as it is supposed to move. What sits wrong is the long stretch of ordinary days between June 2024 and April 2026 during which a family that Chicago watched, admired, and endorsed for public office was apparently moving towards something that nobody saw coming. That stretch is where the real question lives. Not in the basement, but in the months before it. Barbara Deer spent her career ensuring that children who struggled to communicate had someone in their corner who could hear what they weren't saying. She built a practice around that. She led organizations in service of it. And somewhere in her own home, something went unheard. She deserved better. So did Caleb. So does every family asked to carry public grief without adequate private support. Barbara Deer was a speech pathologist, a community leader, a mother, and a woman who gave everything she had to a city that needed her. She deserved to grow old in the neighborhood she never left. She deserved more time. At a community event honoring her late husband, a neighbor eloquently summarized the collective sentiment, saying, her and her husband were big on community and youth. This is a second blow to us, losing him and now, of course, his wife. The family impact, we can't even measure it. It's important that we just wrap our arms around the Deer family right now in their time of bereavement, and our neighbors here in this community. Talk to your children. Maybe something's troubling them that we just don't see on the surface. Try and probe a little bit, dig deeper. At the dedication of the Dr. Dennis Deer Community Justice Center, Barbara herself spoke with profound emotion. I have my Kleenex this morning. I'm just making it through. This is just a joyous occasion. Our family is so honored that this building is being named after Dr. Dennis Deer. And we're just truly grateful. I just want to share a quick story. I met Dennis when I was 15 and he was 17. We were students at Collins High School. Every year Collins High School would have an academic and athletic banquet. Dennis played football, and I honestly had never even seen him at the school because back then the class sizes were huge. My freshman class was probably 400 strong. His senior class was huge. At that banquet, he was given an award for football, and I was like, ooh, he's kind of cute. He definitely caught my attention. And he got awards for intellect and National Honor Society. That was the first time he saw me and my twin sister because I was getting all the awards for modern dance and for National Honor Society as well. So, he came up with this plan to follow us outside to the car because we had won so many trophies and bikes for perfect attendance. He followed us to the car and introduced himself and asked my mom if he could help put everything in the car. So, he was smart even then. And he always had a plan and a strategy. What I loved most about him is he truly loved our family, he loved his family, our 3 beautiful young adult children that are standing here. He just poured a lot of wisdom into people, and I always called him the master motivator because if you thought you couldn't do something, after you talked to Dennis, I promise you, you were going to know that you were all in and you were going to know that you could do it. So, I'm so proud that this center is being named after Dennis because I want every youth, every young adult that comes through there to know that they can do it and that the person that building is named after is rooting for them in heaven. Her son, Canaan, also spoke that day, reflecting on his father's enduring spirit. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? I'm Canaan, the youngest twin. That's my brother. I'm more good-looking than my brother. So, y'all didn't know I wrote anything, so I just wanted to say, my dad would be overwhelmed with joy today just seeing how many people came out to support him, seeing how many beautiful people came out to just believe in the idea of being able to change the system and how it is. So, yeah, I just wanted to end on a quote he always said, the hustle continues. And it will continue. It always will continue. He poured so much into us, and it will continue. Thank y'all. If this case moved you, please subscribe to Criminal Minds and leave a like. It helps more people find stories that deserve to be told.